Well, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of The League of Biblical Enthusiasts. Today, we continue along our series, History of the English Bible, and you're looking at yet another study Bible. If you remember, in our last episode, we reviewed the New Oxford Annotated Bible, and you can see it in our playlist. But today, we look at another one, particularly interesting for Gentile Christians. This is a innovative but instructive study Bible, and it's called the Complete Jewish Study Bible. We'll take you through its origin story, its history, translation based, its editors, the structure, distinctives of this Bible, and a short evaluation at the end. Lots to cover, so let's get going. The Complete Jewish Study Bible is a product primarily from the hands of David H. Stern, who was a Messianic Jew. The general editor of this study Bible is Rabbi Barry Rubin, also a Messianic Jew. The theological editor is Rabbi John Fisher, also a Messianic Jew. Most, if not all, of the contributors of various study articles, footnotes, and so forth are Messianic Jews. So let's talk for a minute about what is a Messianic Jew. A Messianic Jew is a Jewish person who believes that Jesus is the promised Messiah and Son of God. But they also maintain their Jewish identity, Jewish customs, Jewish cultures, the festivals, holidays, and so forth. They will combine elements of Judaism and their Christian beliefs. There are perhaps a 500,000 or so Messianic Jews today. Now, it is considered a heresy by traditional Judaism, Rabbinic Judaism, due to their acceptance of Jesus of Nazareth as the Messiah. Rabbinic Judaism believes that the Messiah is still yet to come. Now, if you recall, in our playlist of episodes on the history of the English Bible, we covered many single author translations, one of which was David H. Stern. It would do you well to revisit that episode, as it will cover details of Dr. Stern's life and his translation approach. But by way of review, let's catch a few minutes by just spending some time reviewing part of that video that will serve as a great introduction to the Complete Jewish Study Bible. Who is David H. Stern? David Harold Stern, born October 31st, 1935, and died October 8th, 2022, was an American-born Messianic Jewish theologian who lived the first 45 years of his life in Los Angeles and later immigrated to Jerusalem, where he lived out the rest of his years and died at age 86. He is buried in the Har HaMenachot Cemetery in Jerusalem, the largest cemetery in the city. He was an avid mountain climber, bodybuilder, and surfer in his early years, and in 1963 co-wrote what has become a classic surfer's guide entitled Surfing Guide to Southern California. He graduated Phi Beta Kappa from UCLA at 19 years old. He earned an MA and PhD in economics from Princeton, and at 24 became the youngest faculty member in UCLA's Graduate School of Management. He became a Christian at age 37 during the Jesus movement days in Southern California, the 1970s. He would probably say that he became a follower of Yeshua. He tells the story of his conversion in the book, 12 Jews Discover Messiah, which is a fascinating account I think you would enjoy reading. And so now, with his newfound faith, he returned to school, first to Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, where he earned a Master of Divinity degree and taught the seminary's first ever course in Judaism and Christianity. Then, for a year, he studied Talmud and Rashi alongside America's future rabbis in the Graduate School of the University of Judaism in Los Angeles. That is now known as the American Jewish University. He soon became aware of the Jewish-Gentile divide in Christendom. On his Jewish side, he was told you could not be a Jew and a Christian at the same time. And on the Gentile side, he received criticism for insisting that he could be fully Jewish and practice Christianity while observing his Jewish religious practices and customs. So he began his life's mission to help Christians understand the Jewishness of the New Testament and to help Jews understand they can be fully Jewish and accept Yeshua as Messiah. As he put it, I did not immediately feel the full tension of being Jewish and at the same time believing in Yeshua as Israel's Messiah. During the following months, I became an object of controversy, and the ramifications of the 2,000-year-old problem became clearer. I saw that understanding it and working toward resolving it would become my life's work. I soon became as interested in Judaism as in the New Testament. I concluded that while the so-called Judeo-Christian tradition is, as one Jewish writer puts it, a myth, equally false is the conclusion that a person cannot be a Jewish believer and must choose either Christ or Judaism, but not both. I became convinced in my spirit the Lord was calling me to help develop Messianic Judaism as a genuine option wherein a person could be 100% Jewish and 100% a follower of Yeshua, the Messiah. So David Stern became involved in Jews for Jesus, and organized Messianic Jewish conferences and leaders meetings. And in time, he published a number of books to help both Christians and Jews understand his position. And they include the Messianic Jewish Manifesto in 1988, which presents his view of the history, ideology, theology, and program of Messianic Judaism in a systematic way. Also, Restoring the Jewishness of the Gospel, also 1988, which is a 90-page abridgment of his manifesto for Christians who have not seriously considered the Jewishness of their own faith. And then the Jewish New Testament, 1989, which is his translation of the New Testament into English in a way that expresses its essential Jewishness without Gentile modifications. And a companion volume was published in 1992, the Jewish New Testament Commentary, which deals verse by verse with the Jewish issues raised in the New Testament. And this work was updated in 2023. Also, the Completed Jewish Bible, 1998, both the Hebrew Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures, the Christian Old Testament, and the New Testament complete. And then in 2007, Messianic Judaism, a modern movement with an ancient past. To our purposes, and to which we'll now turn, is the revised edition of the Jewish New Testament, first published in 1988, revised in 2023, and subtitled A Translation of the Brit Hadashah, which is the New Covenant, that expresses its Jewishness. So, a few takeaways from that video clip. After Dr. Stern's conversion to Christianity, it became his life's mission to help Christians understand the Jewishness of their Bible, particularly the New Testament, and also to help non-Messianic Jews come to a proper understanding of their view of Jesus and the whole scheme of things. Dr. Stern's education at Fuller included Greek studies, which served him well to translate the New Testament portion. But I do need to update you on his translation of the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, or also called Tanakh, and we'll spend some time with that later. You would think that Stern's upbringing as a Jew and his studies would equip him with translating the Hebrew Old Testament. In fact, it did not. He admits in his introduction to the complete Jewish Bible that he, and I quote, had no expertise in biblical Hebrew that would justify me trying to translate the Tanakh, which we know is the Hebrew Bible. Tanakh is simply an acronym for the Hebrew Bible in its three parts, Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, the law, the prophets, and the writings. This is the Hebrew Bible in whole. So, what did he do since he felt unequipped to translate the Hebrew Bible from Hebrew? He turned to the Jewish Publication Society Bible, which is the standard English translation of the Hebrew Bible, and he paraphrased it into modern English. Let's take a minute to look at a timeline of events leading up to the 2016 Complete Jewish Bible. By the way, a very well produced book. Pages don't bleed. It's laid out in easy to read format. The typeface is great. It's really, as a book, a produced book, it's unmatched. Dr. Stern converts to Christianity in 1972 at the age of 37. He has already earned a PhD in economics from Princeton and for a time was a professor in economics at UCLA. By 1975, he has earned his Master's of Divinity from Fuller Theological Seminary. He then studied the Talmud and Rashi alongside America's future rabbis at the Graduate School of the University of Judaism in Los Angeles. In 1979, he and his wife, Miriam, made Aliyah, that is, they emigrated to Israel and made that their home for the rest of their life. Dr. Stern's passion for uniting traditional Gentile Christianity with Messianic Judaism led to several important publications. And in 2016, we see the culmination of many years of work with his magnum opus, the Complete Jewish Study Bible, the subject of this episode. It is a comprehensive study Bible based on the updated text of his Complete Jewish Bible, and it features extensive study notes and articles created under the direction of General Editor Rabbi Barry Rubin. And what of Dr. Rubin? Barry A. Rubin received his MA in Communications from Ohio University and is Rabbi of Emmanuel Messianic Jewish Congregation in Clarksville, Maryland. He serves on several boards and has been in the forefront of Messianic Judaism since the 1970s. Dr. Rubin became a believer in Yeshua in 1973, and he said, and I quote, "I wanted my people to know that the Messiah has come. The vast majority of Jewish people have been fairly turned off, but by reading the Complete Jewish Study Bible, they will see Yeshua in his original Jewish world, not the Gentile world in which he is often seen." He continued, "Moreover, as Christians read the Complete Jewish Study Bible, they too will begin to understand that the movement called Christianity was actually a sect of first century Judaism. It morphed into a Gentile religion that disconnected itself from its roots. The Complete Jewish Study Bible helps reattach them, their Jewish faith, to the Christian faith." Now, with all this in mind, let's turn to the text and structure of the Complete Jewish Study Bible and how it differs from traditional Bibles. The Complete Jewish Study Bible, and we may refer to it as the CJSB, does not separate the Old Testament from the New Testament with two title pages, one, the Old Testament, and the second, the New Testament. It presents the complete Bible as a single unified document. The CJSB begins with the Tanakh, our Old Testament, and it's divided into three major sections: the Torah, the first five books of Moses, followed by the prophets, and then the writings. These books appear in a different order than you would find in a traditional Protestant Bible. The order of a typical Protestant Bible, Old Testament, follows the order found in the Latin Vulgate by Jerome, and it has 39 books, excluding the apocryphal ones, of course. The CJSB has only 24 books because the Hebrew Bible considers some books to be a single book. 1st and 2nd Samuel is one book. 1st and 2nd Kings is one book. The 12 minor prophets is one book. Ezra and Nehemiah is one book. 1st and 2nd Chronicles is one book. Therefore, our Protestant Old Testament counts these as 20 books, but the Complete Jewish Study Bible following the Masoretic text counts only 5. Another difference you will encounter is the names of the books of the Bible in the Complete Jewish Study Bible. In many books of the Hebrew Bible, our Protestant Old Testament, the Complete Jewish Study Bible presents the names of a book with the transliteration that would be found in the Masoretic text. And the Masoretic text typically names a book by the first few words of the first verse. For example, instead of Genesis, we read Bereshit, which in Hebrew means in the beginning. Exodus is named Shemot, because that means these are the names, the opening line of that book. Several books in the New Testament are transliteration of their Hebrew words. Thus, Matthew is titled Mattiyahu. John is Yochanan. The book of Hebrews is simply named to a group of Messianic Jews. Indeed, the New Testament is called the Brit Hadashah, or New Covenant in Hebrew. Let me read just a couple of verses from the Complete Jewish Study Bible to get a feel for its text, one from the Old Testament, one from the New Testament. In 2 Chronicles 36, verse 11, we read, Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began his reign, and he ruled for 11 years in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the perspective of Adonai, his God. He did not humble himself before Yirmiyahu, the prophet, speaking on behalf of Adonai. In Matthew 4, verses 12 through 14, the Complete Jewish Study Bible reads, When Yeshua heard that Yochanan had been put in prison, he returned to the Galilee, but he left Nazareth and came to live in Kfar Nahum, a lakeshore town near the boundary between Zebulun and Naphtali. So the good news is, see what I did there? Is that there is a glossary of Hebrew words with pronunciation into English near the end of the Complete Jewish Study Bible. Now, Dr. Stern lists 3 ways in which his translation brings out the Jewishness of the New Testament. First, it does so cosmetically. That is, as we said, Hebrew name for many common names and phrases, like Yeshua instead of Jesus, Yochanan instead of John, Yaakov instead of James, and Kepha instead of Peter, Talmid instead of disciple, to do tzedakah instead of give to charity, and there are many more. Secondly, culturally and religiously, there are changes that bring out the Jewish cultural or religious context. For example, in Matthew 9:20, the text reads, a woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years approached him from behind and touched the seat on his robe. The seat is the ritual tassel that the Torah instructed men to wear on the corners of their garments as a reminder to obey all of God's laws. And thirdly, theologically, Messianic Jewish scholars consider the Gentile New Testament permeated with theology that de-emphasizes Jews as being still a people of God, and that the Torah is still valid, and that God is still one. And they aim to correct this in their translation of certain texts and articles and notes. One key example is Romans 10, verse 4, in which traditional translations have something like the American Standard Version, which says, For Christ is the end of the law unto righteousness to everyone that believeth. The Complete Jewish Study Bible has, for the goal at which Torah aims is the Messiah, who offers righteousness to everyone who trusts. The issue is over the translation of the Greek word telos. Does that word mean end, or does it mean purpose, or perhaps goal? That's the issue. Another case involves the Complete Jewish Study Bible's sensitivities to anti-Semitism that some see in the book of John, the Gospel of John. There is unfortunately a sad history of some Christians who have used the Gospel of John to blame the Jews for their unbelief and crucifixion of Jesus. Much of this centers around the Greek word Judaioi, commonly translated Jews. And Stern translates the word as Judeans, and by this he's making the point that the word points to the more conservative Jews of Judea, represented particularly by Pharisees and Sadducees, not Jewish people in general or as a whole. Well, let's move on to note the various structural, and educational features of the complete Jewish study Bible that fill out its 1,905 pages of text. The CJSB begins with a two-page introduction by its general editor, Rabbi Barry Rubin, followed by Dr. Stern's 40-page 1998 introduction to his complete Jewish Bible, in which he discusses his purposes, his translation philosophy, which, by the way, is dynamic equivalence, and special features found in his translation. There is a section called Features Unique to the Complete Jewish Study Bible, and four are noted. Number one, there is a new Bible book introduction written from a Jewish perspective. Secondly, the study notes. There are extensive footnotes that help readers understand deeper meanings behind the Jewish text. Third, a list of contributors. 25 contributors, both Jewish and Christian, helped to guide the study Bible. And a complete list with a short note about each is given near the back of this Bible. 4, 8 full color maps are included at the very end of the Bible. And exclusive to the complete Jewish study Bible are 34 topical articles scattered throughout the Bible. And these articles cover subjects such as Jewish customs, messianic prophecy, the names of God, Shabbat, the Torah, Yeshua's Sermon on the Mount, and the applicability of the Noahide laws to Gentiles. There are also 12 theme articles chosen by the general editor Barry Rubin, and these 12 theme articles are anti-Jewish scriptural interpretation, covenants, Jewish customs, Jewish Gentile relations, messianic prophecy, the names of God, the Sabbath, salvation and atonement, the holy days of Israel, the land of Israel, Torah, and the tabernacle. And these 12 theme articles are elaborated by some 117 accompanying articles that seek to explain each when necessary. For example, in Leviticus, several articles feature the themes, the holy days of Israel, and they are explained in side articles explaining the feast of first fruits, Rosh Hashanah, the Feast of Tabernacles, and Yom Kippur. Several other features include a brief summary of rabbinic literature, including the Mishnah, the Talmud, and other works. There's also a biography of rabbis and sages and a section called Works Cited for Further Reading. We've barely touched the hem of the garment, pardon that pun, but we would like to now provide an overall impression of the complete Jewish study Bible. Actually, in a general way, I quite like it. That's probably because I enjoy Hebrew, enjoy reading a Bible that uses lots of transliterations. It keeps me rooted in the Jewishness of the New Testament. I like to say Yerushalayim, Shaul, Yitzchak, Yochanan, and so on. I enjoy learning about Jewish customs, old and new, from the articles found in this complete Jewish study Bible. I do think the study Bible raises some very important questions. One of which, is there an Aramaic or Hebrew original of the Gospels or Acts? A minority of people seem to think so, and it's intriguing to think about it. How do we understand the interplay between the thorough Jewish context amidst the Hellenistic culture that the first century Jewish disciples lived in? To what extent did Greco-Roman ideas find their way into the New Testament? And just how do we understand the law versus the gospel? Well, I always have more questions than I can answer, it seems. Not to say I don't have opinions, I do. But the Complete Jewish Study Bible forces me to think a little harder about these issues, which is a good thing. I would say that for Messianic Jews and evangelical Christians who want to understand the Jewish cultural origins of their faith, this study Bible is detailed and a very useful resource. But for scholars and researchers, the Complete Jewish Study Bible must be seen on its own terms. It is an unapologetic work of apologetics. It seeks to ultimately persuade non Messianic Jews of their point of view in Jesus as the promised Messiah, and also to persuade Gentile Christians that their Bible is a work by and for Jews. I do believe it's helpful to see various translation choices like gold in Romans 10:4 versus end, and to think about how that would make quite a profound difference. It is a valuable source for studying Messianic Jewish interpretation and theology, but not for impartial textual criticism or as a source for unbiased Jewish exegesis. It is based on a single person translation, which should always cause our agenda radar to go on alert. But Dr. Stern realized that he did have an agenda. And to his credit, he valued team translation. And he said, and I quote, I can admit that a team might have done a better job, but I've done the best I can. Well, there's so much more, as always, and we just don't have time to go on and on. And I hope you will note the resources that we provide in our Substack, which allows you to go much deeper into Dr. Stern, his background, translation philosophy, Dr. Rubin, the various contributors that are listed at the back of the book, and all the issues that this Bible would raise from a Gentile or Protestant perspective. I just hope that this episode has been helpful. And if it has, please click like, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends. And we may continue along this path in the future episodes with more study Bibles. Who knows? In any event, stay curious, read carefully, depend on first hand sources, primary source material, research carefully. Don't fall back always on AI for simple answers. In any event, if there is any AI tool that I recommend for helping you, not providing all the answers, but for assisting you in study, that would be Notebook LM, a Google product. And I've mentioned that before. And in our Substack, we will have some resources that Notebook LM has helped provide. In any event, always check any AI product for accuracy. So we'll see you soon in the next episode of The League of Biblical Enthusiasts.